webinar is now live. And I'm starting to be a broken record, but every week I'm amazed by how nicely Zoom works for this purpose. But I see folks joining us for another week of the lunchroom. Hello, hello. Today I'm joined by the amazing Emma Watt, and we'll do some intros in a minute. But for right now, Emma, how are you doing on this fine, windy Tuesday?
I'm good. I'm glad it's so sunny and lovely outside here in Somerville. After a couple of gray days, I feel like it's good, giving me good energy for the week,
I like that. I respect that. It is sunny here, but pretty epically windy to the point where I am in a new location because my home location lost some internet and some power, but we're going to truck through. It's just another Tuesday on the lunch.
The show must go on.
The
lunch must go on.
And you can't not eat lunch. It's not the most important meal of the day, but I think it feeds the soul the most, the lunchroom. So, wow, I'm very cheesy. What a time. Well, thank you for joining me, and thank you all for tuning in at home. I'm Sarah Schofield Manser. I'm the A.R.T's Assistant Director of Special Events and Partnerships. I take the she series of pronouns. I am a light-skinned white woman with very dark hair pulled back into a bun. I'm wearing a cream-colored, very comfy waffle weave sweater. It's my favorite sweater of all time. You may have seen it on the lunchroom before. And as I said, I'm in a new background today. I am in the kitchen of my very amazing and generous in-laws who offered me some refuge when the power went out at my own house. So you see some new, very pretty paintings in the background, and I'm happy to be here. I'd like to acknowledge that the land that Oberon and the Loeb Drama Center occupy is the unceded Indigenous territory of the Massachusetts people, and that I myself am calling in from the territory of the Massachusetts, Wabanaki, Pennacook, and Pentucket people. I'm going to drop a little link in the chat for all of you to investigate where you might be calling in from at home, and I encourage you to check that out after this event. So let me put that in there. A little bit of Zoom housekeeping before I let Emma introduce herself. So we will, as usual, reserve the last 15 to 20 minutes of the hour for audience Q&A. Please feel free to submit questions for Emma and our guests using the Q&A feature at the very bottom of your Zoom screen. Note that it's different from the chat feature, which is disabled. So you can submit your question at any point in the hour, and Emma and our guests will answer them at the end. Another thing is, if you'd like to follow along with some transcripts, we do have live auto captions enabled. You can turn those on by looking at the bottom of your Zoom screen. There's a little icon at the very far right that should have 3 dots and say more. If you click that, you can show subtitles, and that will give you some nice captions that are automatically generated. So they're not perfect, but they're pretty great for following along. And again, the chat is disabled, and I do need to say at the top of this event that the A.R.T. does not tolerate any incidents of prejudice, racial discrimination, or attacks. We expect our audience to be held to behavior that does not include any of those things. So we're holding you all accountable in the event that anyone is inappropriate using the Q&A feature or anything else in this Zoom. So I just wanted to name that at the very beginning of the hour. Without further ado, Emma, would you like to introduce yourself to our friends?
Absolutely. Thanks, Sarah. My name is Emma Watt. I am one of the line producers here at the A.R.T. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm zooming in from the land of the Massachusetts and Pawtucket people here in Somerville, Mass. And I am a light-skinned white woman with shoulder-length, kind of reddish-brown hair pulled back in a headband. Behind me is a large window and my roommate's art desk. That's me.
Love it. Fantastic. Well, I think this is my time to shine and do what I do best and hop off camera and monitor everything on the back end. So have an amazing conversation, Emma, and everyone else. I hope to see you another week on the lunchroom. Enjoy.
Thanks, Sarah. And thank you all for joining us. I am very excited about today's guests. They are new friends of mine, magicians, literally, figuratively, curators, theater makers, and producers. Vinny, DePonto, and Geoff, Kanick, do you want to join me in the lunchroom?
Hi, Emma.
Hello, welcome. Welcome to this Zoom space. Vinny and Geoff, would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Vinny DePonto. I'm a co-creator of the Conjurors Club. I use he series pronouns. I'm calling in from Beacon, New York. Some would say upstate New York, but it's the native land of Wappinger Lenape people. I am olive-skinned Caucasian man with curly hair, currently being wrangled in a forest green beanie, and I'm sitting in front of my credibility bookshelf.
Hello, and I am Geoff, co-creator of the Conjurors Club. I use he, him pronouns. I'm joining you from the land of the Lenape people. I am light-skinned. I have brown, short hair. Behind me is a bookshelf, and I'm wearing one of my favorite Blue Galaxy shirts.
Well, welcome, and thanks for talking with me today. So Vinny and Geoff are the creators and the masterminds behind A.R.T's next show, the Conjurors Club. Can you two tell me a little bit in your own words, what is the Conjurors Club? What is this, magical mystery space that we've all been so engaged in over the last couple months?
Yeah, the Conjurors Club is a maybe more than 100-year-old secret society, and a place where magicians from all over the world come, gather, and to hone their craft, to share secrets, and have access to the archives of the Conjurors Club. We at the Conjurors Club have learned that the audience is an essential part of the magic. Without the audience, magic cannot happen. So we are opening up the doors. We're inviting you to come in, become honorary members of the magic of the Conjurors Club, and to be part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just add to that and say the Conjurors Club is a place that we can all sort of come together and experience magic together, where you can invite friends who you haven't seen in a long time from all around the world to come and see the magic. So,
absolutely. And one thing that you always say about the Conjurors Club, Geoff, that I love so much is that it's the most inclusive secret society in the world. Yeah. And I do think there's something, one of the things I'm enjoying so much about working on the project is there's something about kind of both kind of cultivating this sense of magic and secrets, and also this sense of invitation. And as I'm thinking about that, I'm wondering, how did the two of you come to be sort of invited into the world of magic? Like, what was your entry point? When were you like, oh, this is something I want to work really hard to do?
Do you want to go?
Big question.
No, you go first. You go first.
I feel like every magician has a grandfather story, but I will say this is a true story, and I love this story. Not to use my grandfather as narrative collateral, but it is true, and it makes sense. So so I had a grandfather who I never got to meet, and he passed. He was a sort of magician by hobby. He would do tricks for his buddies during wartime, and he kept all of his old ephemera and sort of tricks. Actually, grab it in a second, from the 30s and 40s, and passed it on to my dad. And at a very young age, my dad showed me this box of weird and wonderful stuff, and with no instructions, and barely my dad could do these tricks. He was not very good at them, but so that's kind of my first introduction to it. I would do a show for my family every Thanksgiving, and I just fell in love with it. It just became, I loved everything about it. I loved the world that it lived in. I just wanted to be on stage and be performing magic. So that's kind of how I fell into it.
Yeah. And when I was little, loved watching. There was a magic special that would always come on like around Thanksgiving time that was called World's Greatest Magic. And I would record it on like a VHS and watch it over and over and over. And it was so cool because it showed like many different magicians performing in many different styles. And sometimes it was like close up, and sometimes it was big stage illusions. But that was like my, I think, gateway into the world of magic. And then I got a magic set for Christmas when I was like 7 years old, and the rest is history.
That's awesome. It's just really interesting always to think about like how artists kind of come to their craft. I think especially when it's something that maybe is like a little more niche than, I mean, actually, you know what? All the performing arts are a little bit niche in their own ways, as I'm saying that. Yeah. Geoff, sorry, Vinny, I think there's something really interesting about like you having your grandfather's box of stuff. Because I think one of the things we've been talking about a lot in the Conjurors Club is like, what is the sort of material culture that we can experience over Zoom? And I think there might be some boxes for audience members as well, though they're not your grandfather's box.
They're not my grandfather's box.
Do you guys want to talk a little bit about like kind of the material culture of magic and how we're thinking about bringing that through the Zoom screen and into people's homes?
Yeah. I think Geoff and I tried to really figure out what were the advantages of doing, instead of thinking this as like a deterrent of magic and magic should never be performed, on the screen, instead of thinking that direction, we sort of thought, okay, well, there's a couple things that happen here. We get an insight into the performer's space. That's really interesting. We have audience members in their own home, in their own personal space. We can have performers from all around the world perform in our show. At the same time, we can send people things. And I think something in the original iteration, the sort of physical show, is that we wanted people to kind of get a 360 experience of magic. So we wanted people to get their hands, not so much on the tricks and the secrets, but of the sort of world of a magician. So I'll give you an example. There's something actually, hold on, sorry.
Yeah, and as Vinny's off screen, I'll just add that we wanted to try to make this the most analog digital performance that we could possible. So if people could physically touch things, if magic could happen in the homes of the people watching this rather than just through the screen, we were really excited about that.
Yes.
You, Vinny.
So these are kind of some of my grandfather's original things. This is not the original box, but these are all the original items. This, for instance, just says, "Don't monkey with anything in this box." And at 2 old, I thought, I have to see what's in this box. And so it would just sit on my dad's desk like this. And every so often I'd go over to it and I like try to open it up. And I knew there was a secret way to open it up. And then finally, a couple of weeks later, he said, it's not a real box. On the back, it says, "Don't be hard-headed. It's a paperweight." And then at that point, I was like, what's a paperweight? But it's not a magic trick, but I love this thing so much. And these types of items, I think, are like little insights into the world of a magician. This is from the 30s, and it's just like a really old magic trick where the colors would change, the dots would change colors on the inside. So these were the types of things in my box. And I think, like, as a live audience, if I'm sitting watching a show, we don't get to like explore these things. Little finger chopper here. So we wanted to give everyone the experience of being able to get their hands on artifacts and the tools of a magician, because it's just what a different way to participate in an experience.
And I'm going to tag on to that, which is we've thought a lot, and a lot of our work outside of the Conjurors Club is about finding things in the world that are magical without being a magic trick. So in this box, we tried to include things that we found really magical, or things that you can participate or play with after the show is over as well, and kind of continue to explore.
Yeah, and I feel like that kind of extends too to like some of the conversations we're having with our guest magicians, which we're excited to announce tomorrow, just about like finding the magical things in their spaces and creating the world of the Conjurors Club in their homes. And I don't know if you guys want to talk a little bit about like what the process has been of like creating digital shows as magicians and like making your space something that is like magical and exciting to look at. It seems like such an important part of being a performer in this time.
Yeah, it's a lot of emails, right, Geoff?
Yeah,
Geoff,
I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
One thing that's like really amazing is that we are in our work with ART is like we have, I love this term, is we have thought partners who are like kind of design consultants. So we've been having Zoom sessions with our magicians to curate their backgrounds, to kind of weave threads of the Conjurors Club. We acknowledge that we're not all trying to be in the same space, and that the Conjurors Club through this virtual platform is a network of magicians, which is incredibly exciting. So it's really wonderful to be working with them to find like, how can we, echo these themes throughout so that there is, like we said, a thread that weaves them all. But we also at the same time are allowing each magician and their voice and their character to totally shine as well.
Yeah. As far as the process, Emma, it's been a wild ride. It's not only are we trying to figure out how to translate magic and theater through these platforms, but the process is different. Geoff was saying that he's not used to doing a show with over email, and both of us are usually, especially when we've collaborated in the past, are in the same room, and we're picking up objects and we're trying things and we're playing, and that's kind of a big part of this. And I think the separateness is a little bit of a hurdle, but I think the process, while it is different, it still is very enriching because we're learning how to communicate in new ways, which is really nice.
And just like to give like a little bit of backstage, it's really fun in this show. There's moments where like before the show starts, all of us magicians gather and kind of like talk shop, or like between different performances, there's little moments where we're able to kind of check in with each other, and it kind of feels like a backstage moment. So that's also like a really fun part of the show as well, is like to feel like you are in community with magicians and able to kind of have that little backstage moment.
Yeah, I remember when we were very first talking about doing this show, one of the things you guys both talked about was the importance of trying to like build some community give magicians opportunity for community in this time, and opportunity for performance and connection through their art form, because it's been so difficult for all of us in the performing arts to like find the joy that we usually find by being together. Can you talk a little bit about the process of selecting this like rotating company of guest magicians, and kind of like what you look for as curators of magic when you're looking for who are the conjurers we're going to feature? What are you watching for? What gets you excited? What draws you to someone as a performer?
Yeah. Great. Do you want to take that?
Sure. I mean, I'll start. I love seeing someone who is sharing part of them in terms of like their personality, their background, their story. And if they get to infuse that into the magic, it's really exciting. And I think all of the people that we are bringing in, like, I'm also like, I feel a little like starstruck sometimes, or like with some of the people that we're bringing in, because I love magic so much, and I've been studying magic for so long. And some of the people are people like I've been like watched like a lecture of, and like now they're like coming to join this club. And so it's really exciting to be bringing these people in, and they're also just like their craft and also their passion for magic totally translates as well. So I think it's like being able to like hear somebody who has their voice and their own take on magic is really exciting, as well as someone who is just, amazing in terms of the craft and all of that as well. And it's fun too to be bringing in people who may not have a stage show. And Vinny, maybe you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, there's a segment of magicians that, didn't necessarily, when the pandemic hit, they had their typical performance was to do what we call walk around or strolling performance, which is to, they get hired by corporate shows and groups of people to walk around a party and show magic close up. And I think when this happened, if you didn't have a stage show, there wasn't anything you could really translate a virtual experience into. Let's say you'd have maybe an hour of material, but there wasn't like a show that was, stitched together. So I think it's been really hard for particularly close-up magicians who really don't now have a venue to be performing in. So we contacted some friends that we knew that could come into this space and do a 20-minute set of close-up magic, which is great because now you can actually control the perspective. So now it's another advantage, which is now, hundreds of people will be able to see what you do close up in this frame. So, the other advantage of this is that we can actually control the perspective as well. But yeah, I'm sort of starstruck as well with Geoff. There are certain people I didn't think we'd be able to get that have just latched onto the idea and loved it.
And I'll also add, as Vinny was talking about, the fact that we are using a camera. There are no green screens. There's no camera trickery happening in this show. We actually just rely on the talent of the magicians that we're bringing in to make it look like camera magic.
Right.
Yeah, we're framing it so that people have a good view, but basically we're just using the camera to give everyone a front row seat, no digital foolery.
as we've been talking about the show, we talk about it like it's a physical space a lot of times. And so one of the things we wanted to feel like everyone was at the front, at a table, around a table. So it's like you're at that first row around the table with the magician as well. Yeah.
Yeah. This is all CGI though. So.
Yeah, none of us really look like this. So when you mention magicians who do close-up magic, that makes me think that there might be other categories or specialties of magicians, which as someone who doesn't know a ton about magic, this is my first magic show. Can you talk a little bit about the different kinds of specialties that magicians have and how do you pick as a magician what you're most interested in doing or learning?
Yeah.
Sorry, that's a little off script, but
no, there are so many different, what I like to call sort of subsets of magic. So I would say I'm particularly most interested in mentalism, which is the subset of magic that deals a lot with mind reading tricks, telepathy tricks. A lot of people say psychological tricks, even though magic, I think, is all psychological in a way. But this particularly uses the audience as a catalyst as a catalyst for the performance, as a sort of Mad Lib for the show. So what I like to do is say, instead of picking a card, you pick a name of a person that means a lot to you and think about them, right? That's what a mentalist does. And they're able to tell you about that person, who that person is, that type of thing. So that it feels a lot like the audience is sort of a part of the story of the show. But there are sleight of hand artists. There are people who just do stage illusions. There are folks that just do, let's say, hypnosis or, mentalism and hypnosis together. So there's a lot of different craft subsets, some of which, some performers are into all of them and they sort of, mix everything together, which is really great as well. But we have a good mix of performers for this lineup, doing an array of subsets of magic.
Yeah. I mean, part of it is dependent on the size of audience. For instance, illusions are for a larger audience and close-up magic is for a smaller group of audience. So that's one way to determine what style or type of magic you're performing, as well as Vinny was saying that there are different kind of specialties that people lean into, whether that is very specific sleight of hand with coins or whether that is mind reading. So we're excited to open up this world that like I said, we both love so much and can really nerd out about. But that's I think the biggest thing when we talked about the Conjurors Club becoming the most welcoming secret society, it's because we want to let people in to know that there is this deep world of history that has come before us. And a lot of things that we have created have are here because of the people that came before us too.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about how, as we're making the Conjurors Club, you're kind of building in that sense of history and that relationship to magical history? Because that has kind of been a thread running through some of our conversations of how can this space both celebrate the magicians who are there in the moment, but also kind of reach out to this like past world of magic.
Yeah. I'll just add a little note at the top of that, which is in our conversation, especially talking with designers and talking with even the magicians that we're involving, is that we wanted to give history to the club. So it's 100 years old, maybe even more. It's secret. I don't know. But that it's happening today. So it wants to have a history of people that have come before us, of, amazing magicians, of history, but it is in relationship with today has been really, really important for us as we've been working on this as well.
Yeah, and the histories are many histories of magic. I think, in pop culture, we really only know, a few famous magicians from history. But we wanted to make sure that we can kind of clue into the many different histories of magic. Folks that were, as famous, let's say, as Harry Houdini back then, but they are lost to the history book. So we want to really honor the idea that there's not just this westernized version of magic history, that there is sort of this global history to magic, and why don't we know about these histories? Why do we only see magic in, a white guy with top hat and tails? So, how can we how can we honor these histories in a way that feels like everyone can be involved. Anyone can come into this club and feel like they're not, they have an understanding of the full world of magic. It's not just one path, if that makes sense. So yeah, I don't know.
I want to add on to that, which is, we're going to get into some grammar here. But the very first version of the Conjurors Club was the Conjurer apostrophe S. And in this version that we have evolved towards, we have actually moved the apostrophe. So it's the Conjurers possessive plural, that it belongs to all conjurers. So that was a big thing for us, that we're getting rid of the idea that there's one person who has this club, and instead it belongs to the network of magicians that are part of this club. And I think that is at the heart of this conversation around honoring the history, the many histories, and also kind of breaking down this idea of hierarchy, that there's not like, this is the best magician. It's like, actually, we can learn from all these different styles and all these different people.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think maybe brings me a little bit to my next question, which is like, the Conjurors Club is this growing and evolving type of performance, place, experience. And obviously we're doing it in this very specific virtual way right now. But like, as we've been working on making it for this iteration, like, what are some like lessons or observations from this process that you think will continue to feed the club going forward? And or tell me the master plan for Conjurors Club world domination, because I know that is one.
I think, we certainly have learned a lot. This whole way of doing theater, to me, like I said, sort of felt like a tangent. I'm sure like everyone was on their path to making their live shows, and then this happened, and we sort of were like, okay, how can we highlight the positive things about this experience? And like I said, there's been a lot of positive experiences. So I think when we do eventually, which I would love to get back into a physical Conjurors Club space again, we can have a location or many locations where we can adopt a lot of the things that we're in communication about now, about the many histories into the club. We can further understand the audience's involvement, and not just involvement, but really understand their experience, right? Because it's very, very personal and up close in the virtual space here. So how can we really apply that to the physical space? And I think like, ultimately, we're learning a lot about technology and how to tell stories through these new mediums. And I think while we haven't really talked about how we'd work in these technologies, maybe there's a whole nother audience that can come in when we do have a physical space, who can experience a part of the club that they can't access. So there are lots of things kind of floating around as far as what I've learned from this and what I will sort of take to the physical performance.
Yeah, I mean, just echoing everything that Vinny has been saying about, accessibility and about how people can come to this club, and that the exciting thing about doing the virtual is that we can have people from all over joining together and being in conversation. And there's like moments in the show that you get to talk to the people that you're at the table with, and with the magicians as well. And I also think too, like, it's really been very enlightening for me in this time too, to not be in competition with other magicians, which I think in the past has been a thing to be like, I'm going to try to book more shows or get this thing. And it's like, instead we can like really like lift up all the magicians that we can and really create a place that welcomes, and a place that employs, and a place that just gives them a spotlight to share what they do so brilliantly.
That's awesome. And on that note, say your wildest Conjurors Club dreams came true in 5 years. What is the Conjurors Club? Sorry. Surprise. Surprise question.
For the physical live performance, we had some dreams for it being a hidden place, sort of like a speakeasy type thing in New York City. The venue that we did it in, we had people enter in from a back alley, which was very exciting. I think I would love, there's a kind of front to the whole experience, which if you come to the show, you'll find out. So it has kind of a speakeasy vibe. So I think I would like to, build a fake shop somewhere and have this whole, we have, I guess we could say this, but there's a fake, a watch shop essentially that this whole thing hides behind. And when you enter the watch shop, ideally, I think you would kind of come into the secret club. But I think a physical space is really just that we kind of just want a home, or many homes. But for right now, a home, and just to see audiences again, that would be the dream.
And I think too, like, as I'm dreaming about what that could be, is like, it would also be a place where maybe there are, like, at 7:00 there's a show, but also it's a place where just magicians are hanging out and honorary members are coming in as well. That it's like, you kind of just like go over to the bookshelf and like all of a sudden there's some magic happening, or you like are seated, down by a coffee table, and then, a conjurer's like, let me show you something I'm working on. And that like magic is like a conversation in the club and not just like a speech. And I think that's like a really exciting to think about how we can welcome people into a space like that.
That's really cool. I hope it happens. One more question before we jump into the audience questions. But, obviously the Conjurors Club is not your only project. You both, have done many amazing other shows in both kind of magic and theatrical settings. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the rest of your work, and either how you feel like it's prepared you for the Conjurors Club or helped you make the Conjurors Club, or something that you're working on that you're excited about and our audiences should keep an eye out for?
I'll just say that the other project I did right before this was my solo virtual show called Mental Amusements. And it went from being a partnership with Airbnb and Atlas Obscura and me doing the show literally in front of the same bookshelf to this performance that turned into, I literally built a small theater in my office. So I have like a small production studio / theater just on the other side of this. So it evolved from there. So I was really excited about that. And that informed the Conjurors Club quite a bit, because we then understood with a little bit of production with a little bit of theatrical, finery, we can actually get it to look like a beautifully produced show. And as far as other projects, I mean, Geoff and I have done a show together a couple years ago that I think informed our working relationship. We, of course, worked on Conjurors Club together, but Geoff and I also did a project called Hemispheres with A.R.T in New York, and where we represented each one side of the brain each, so left side, right side. And it was really a lovely experience collaborating and literally being the right hand to a magic trick. We did this trick where Geoff was the left hand, I was the right hand, and we did a trick together. And it was really difficult and fun and amazing, but it taught us a lot about our creative communication and collaboration, and that sort of helped to inform this project too.
Yeah. That was a fun show. I'm a theater maker on top of being a magician, and I'm the co-artistic director of Lub Dub Theater. And a lot of our practice with Lub Dub is about collaboration. And so I think entering into this and just welcoming these thought partners and designers and working with Vinny and how can we just always Emma will laugh, but how can we set ourselves up for success, set up the audience for success, set up our guest magicians for success? A lot of that work and the collaboration around that has really informed how I've entered into working with the Conjurors Club. I'll also add, in the show Hemispheres, we had a section where Vinny and I each, separate from talking to each other, wrote down our memory of first meeting each other. And the details were vastly different. We showed each other magic. It's we didn't show it. It was very, very interesting. But so that show was about also how we came together and how we came to meet as well. Yeah.
Which, by the way, we both came from sort of immersive theater backgrounds, working on different shows in New York. I'm part of Third Rail Projects, and Geoff was working on Queen of the Night and with Lub Dub and that whole group. And we sort of just took everything we experienced from working with those theater companies, and we're like, how does magic fit into all of this, and just sort of started chipping away from there.
That's awesome. So we have a lot of questions from audience members, so I'm going to go there if that's okay with you guys. So Geoff, maybe building off of what you said about setting the audience up for success, we've got a lot of questions from folks wondering how to choose their Conjurors Club experience, how to know which night, which breakout room is the best. What do you guys think? If you were buying tickets, what are you telling folks as the inside knowledge?
Well, on the inside knowledge is you can't go wrong. It's actually really how we've thought about this whole process is how can we make every night special? Because also we really see the audience as scene partners in a way. You are part of the experience. So the fact that you are there, you are going to influence what the show is because you're at the table with the other the magicians or the other audience joining us. In terms of room, I think the biggest thing for us was thinking about how we can allow friends or people to go to the theater together. So the rooms for us are really a place where if you have someone from across the country or maybe down the street that you want to go to a show with, just make sure you pick the same rooms on the same night, and then you will be able to be at the table together as we talk about. And it's really exciting for us that it's we kind of love the idea that you don't necessarily know what magician you might see that night. And some magicians are there for a week and some are there for only one night. But it's going to be really fun no matter what night you pick.
Yeah. And I will say that I think each night we're trying to have the variety that we talked about earlier in terms of magicians, right? Every program is aimed to be a balanced sort of group of magicians. It seems right. Cool. This is a good question. Without spoilers, is there a particular element of the show that you're most anxious about? It's kind of fun.
I'll just say, I think maybe the secret package, not so much anxious about it as far as I don't think it will go right, but I think I'm actually more just because we've only done it once before. This is kind of the next iteration of what we really wanted. And I'm actually just curious to hear about people's experiences with the objects and of course open to it evolving. So I think like that's the big thing about this, is that it is completely fluid. We're never locking the show. We're understanding that this can change and evolve over time. So I think like the package is a part of that. Is like we really want to send people things that really get the gears turning and that they enjoy. So I think maybe that for me is the thing that I'm most curious about, I guess.
Yeah, again, I don't think I'm excited. I think anxious, oftentimes, if you just change the word to excited, it feels the same. So I'm really excited about sharing. I think it's really fun to be like, you're not seeing one magician at this show, you're seeing many magicians. And I think that's like really fun to be like, oh, there are these like different flavors of magic. But I mean, obviously technology is also like, finicky. But we've done so much work to prepare for that. So I don't feel anxious about that at all, actually.
That's awesome. And that same person had some questions about what is the relationship like with the guest magicians? Do you guys feel like ownership over what they do? How do you kind of enter into that collaboration with folks, especially if they're going to be there for just one night? How are you approaching that?
There's a place in LA called the Magic Castle, right? And we have been really inspired by the Magic Castle. The great thing about Magic Castle is that people pop in. They pop in not even in a traditional performance, but they're able to just kind of pop in and sit in a corner, and a crowd of people would gather around them and they would perform a few tricks. We want the guest magician to kind of feel like that. There's no sort of ownership. We want the guest performer to kind of pop in, do a set for the rotating rooms, and then kind of disappear. We want it to feel sort of casual in that way. So I think like we hopefully, when we do this longer and longer, we can get to a point where we can bring in many different guest magicians and put them sort of in many secret corners of our space, so that people will say to each other, hey, have you seen so-and-so? And they're like, no, I haven't seen so-and-so. And well, you have to see that person. That's really great. And those are the types of things I really love from, for instance, the castle.
Yeah. And I think in the same way that we talk about like the audience being in conversation with the show, we want the guest magicians to kind of be in conversation with the show. So that's a lot of the process that we've been trying to develop. It's like, how can we, make this possible for people to come in just for one night? But no ownership. And I think we're like excited. Like, I kind of like look forward to seeing what they'll do. We talk about it, of course, so that we make sure that there's a variety that's happening across the different magicians, but the more that it's just like in community is the better.
Yeah, we've kind of talked a lot about the invitation being like there's maybe suggestion or it's an invitation. It doesn't feel prescriptive the way that we've been and you all have been talking with the magicians.
And a place for people to experiment and to play with, again, like what magic is, or like what they want to share and what like they're excited about. So in that way, we're excited to again push like what is like a magic set. Like maybe it is like, kind of like going through, part of a thing of a magic book and the history of that, and then showing part of, some of that. So it's like we're kind of we're down to explore.
That's awesome. From another audience member, and I don't know if this is the kind of question that you can answer or if it needs to be a secret, but someone is wondering if there is a magic trick you have wanted to or tried to master but haven't yet. Like, is there a dream skill or element you wish you could do in your act that you're not quite there yet? You can say no, because I know that there's a lot of like the sort of secrets of the trade are real for this.
I don't know. There's not really been something for me that I feel like I probably should say also because I'm not personally not so interested in performing sleight of hand. I have training in it and I love doing it, but it's not something that I think I want to be so technically good at that I'm like so incredibly proficient at it. And I think maybe that is where kind of that question would really, like, for instance, like magicians like go after the center deal, which is how to deal a card from the center of the deck. It's like this, mystical, magical thing that only a few people can do. So personally, I would say there's not really a golden goose that that I'm after, but Geoff, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm thinking about it, and I think my answer is more so like there are times when you do a piece of sleight of hand, and maybe it's with cards, and you do something like a center deal, and it just feels so smooth and so perfect that maybe it's more that I'm like chasing those moments of like when it has felt so effortless. Yeah. Like a good jazz solo. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's actually really great because we sort of strive. There's so much practice in magic, right? There's so much stuff going on. You get in muscle memory. You do it. So you're on stage so many times that eventually you might lose the rapport, lose the sort of jazz in your head, which I think is something maybe not technically I want to be good at, but something I want to embody, right? I want to be a performer on stage that is still listening to their audience and is still in the moment and staying present. And I think that's something that so many performers forget about sometimes, just because sometimes we're on autopilot. So maybe that's it. It's just like getting back to the jazz of it all. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's a little bit of a follow-up question of like, how do you know when something is ready for an audience, and what happens when something goes wrong? I'm thinking about sometimes a juggler will drop the ball, no matter how amazing they are. Like, what is that like?
Speaking as a juggler, I'm also a juggler. That it's different because I think in juggling, it's important to drop the ball at least once to show how hard it is. So in juggling, I think you have to drop once and then show how difficult it is for people to understand that. It's hard because what Vinny was talking about in sleight of hand is the more that we practice, it looks like the less we do. So the idea is that I never even did anything, but somehow something happened, something magical happened. And in terms of when things go wrong, I think it's, of course, they never go wrong. Nothing ever goes wrong. But I think it's instead like jazz or like, whatever. If you can be in the moment, then it's not wrong because you're just finding a new path. And I think that's really the way to be thinking about magic. It's like, there is some improvisation. And I think that's essential because we want to have a scene partner with us and we want to be in rapport and we want to be live. Like that's also, I want to say the Conjurors Club happens live every night. It's not pre-recorded. It is something that is in conversation with whoever is joining us.
And in a way, those audience members, in a way, are a sounding board for magicians if they want to try new things.
Yeah.
It is a venue, a place where they can do that. Geoff and I, when we're working on material of our own, we'll have close friends come over and show new material to, or have our family members be involved, and trusted people who sort of know a little bit about what we're doing, that we can kind of say, did that look okay? Did that make sense? Are you fooled? Does it, so those are the kind of questions we can ask. And this, I think, will also be that with, not so much so casual like that, but I think magicians will have a venue where they can, bounce things off, new things off.
On a similar note, one of our guests wants to know if the constraints of virtual performance have resulted in any new insights about the relationship between magicians and audience.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we have always focused on audience in the Conjurors Club, in their experience walking around a space and interacting with new spaces. I think even more so now, it's so important with screen fatigue and everything else that we're not, performing at an audience. We're performing with an audience. And I think that's a really, really essential piece that I think some performers, forget sometimes. You are there, you are there for a reason. You have to acknowledge that it's live. You are working with people. You're not using them as props. They are, like Geoff said before, there is no magic without them. So we'll take that definitely into next iterations even more to heart than we already did.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah. Another audience member wants to know if you have a favorite magic memory or a memorable encounter with magic, loosely defined.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that maybe is like in performance, in the world.
Yeah. Favorite magic memory, like as in meeting a magician, or just anything, I guess.
Anything. Go for it.
I think anything.
Whatever inspires you.
They said loosely defined. So I think it's free form.
The fact that we're both like going, like looking up and off to the side means that there's a lot of magic moments. I think, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of, you got something, Vinny?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I did the show many years ago with Ars Nova, and my co-writer and I came up with something that felt really impossible. We thought there's no way we could possibly do this. And we just wrote it and said, let's see what happens. And me, him, and my director were sitting in a room. We were banging our heads against the wall, couldn't do it. The set designer came in, the lighting designer, the sound designer, all the designers, stage managers came in. We all had this discussion and figured it out. And for me, that was a magic moment to be like, we can't really create this in a vacuum. Like even though I know all the techniques of magic, I couldn't figure it out. So I couldn't figure it out. So I needed a team, and that felt amazing. That felt like really great to finally, having been working as a solo performer for so many years, finally having a collaborative problem-solving team and then we did it and the audience lost their minds. So it was like, it just felt so cool. It felt so cool to come up with something and then see it on stage and see it do so well.
I just remembered a moment, which is I did a show called The First Trick I Ever Learned. And in that show, I asked people to go back and think about early moments of magic they experienced, or if there's objects, and they talk to their neighbors and they kind of share. And then I asked, did anyone's involve maybe a coin? And someone was like, yes. And she goes, I go, what was your magic moment? She goes, my then boyfriend and now husband showed me a coin trick, and that's when I knew I loved him. And I was like, the show is over. We are done here. But I think that that those moments when the audience brings something into it have been really magical in the past. Yeah.
Yeah. It's cool to hear you both talk about these moments that are born out of community.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think I've been so impressed in all of our conversations with both you and with the guest magicians, like how independent they all are. Like everyone knows how to do their whole thing. They have created this whole design for their work and this whole narrative by themselves. I mean, maybe they had help, but it feels like it's by themselves. And so like hearing like those moments of collaboration being like the thing that really takes it from beautiful personal performance into actual magic is cool.
I think that's the thing that audiences, I feel excited about letting audiences in on that. It takes a village, like Geoff was talking about, you practice so much to make something invisible. I think when people see a final product of something, they don't necessarily know the incredible work, often collaboration that has gone into bringing to life a magical piece, whether it's a trick or a piece of theater. And I think that is the kind of world that we want to let people in on, that there is that community here.
Yeah. One more from the audience. For a beginner who wants to get into magic, where is a good place to start? I know we have a lot of young people who are excited about magic tricks and learning magic. What would you say to those young aspiring magicians? Or aspiring magicians of all ages, I'll say that.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'll start with just what my experience was, which was going to the library. There's a lot of great magic books in the library. I feel like they're like hidden in plain sight. But that was for me, going to those books and out of cardboard or whatever, like building some of my own props and understanding why this is, deceptive in a certain way, or why this, feels like magic. So that's like a very simple first step, is just like go to your local library and like ask like, where's the magic book section? Because it's usually by like playing cards and games and puzzles. So it's in that category. But that's like a really great place to look. Vinny, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say the same. I'd also add to just, watch as much magic as you can. I think, the world's greatest magic, like Geoff was saying, was a series for me, too, watching that as a kid, just being like, wow, there's so many different types of magic. There's so many different performers, like just seeing as much magic as possible. Thankfully, we have YouTube to go down the history rabbit hole of performers all over the world who have done some amazing stuff. And then in person, to see magic in person, if you can, as much as you can. There's certainly something, if you've never seen it in person before, there's something about being in the room at the same time where the rules are all the same and the rules of the room. That is the thing that really will inspire you, I think.
Awesome. Just trying to think of like a nice last little thing for us to leave on. What is, one thing, one feeling that you hope people will take away from the Conjurors Club?
I mean, my first instinct here is that people feel like connected. And I think that, or like unified, like in like being able to share these like common experiences. And like, obviously there's so many people are like isolated in their own, homes, but I really do hope that people can feel like they're going to a show with a friend, or like they were like out somewhere, obviously in the safest way possible, but that I hope that it feels like you've journeyed somewhere, like you've traveled, I think is maybe another way of saying that, just by going to this show.
Yeah. And I would say, I hope people connect to themselves a little bit more. I feel like we're living in a world that everything is certain, and if it's not certain, you can look it up. And we literally have every answer to every question in the palm of our hands. And I hope that people come into this with an open mind and just wanting to experience wonder and walk away with that. Not so much wanting to figure things out, but just having felt a little bit of wonder in a world that can be, very scary and empty of wonder.
Awesome. Well, I think that is where we'll end for today. Thank you both so much for joining us. And thank you to our audience for taking time out of your day to hopefully feel a little bit more connected. I hope you have a day with a sense of wonder. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Emma. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.